Wonka is a new take on the whimsical world of Willy Wonka, an eccentric and quirky chocolatier with a knack for theatrics. Directed by Paul King, this film is sort of an origin story of Willy Wonka, with a dream to opening a chocolate factory in a town renowned for its chocolate. A young Willy Wonka takes on a corrupt cartel of greedy chocolatiers and saves some new friends from a money-grubbing hotel owner. Though the movie is quite lighthearted, with several catchy songs and dance sequences, it shows a lot of serious crimes. So let's take a trip from sugar-coated fantasies to bitter realities and talk about the various crimes committed by different characters in the film, starting with the main character himself, our eccentric chocolatier, Mr. Willy Wonka. Let's take a look at Mr. Wonka's rap sheet and see what kind of consequences he could be looking at. It seems like whenever Mr. Wonka isn't singing his heart out or making new and exciting chocolates, he is engaging in some lighthearted B&E. In fact, I might even say that it is his favorite crime. In the film, he racks up multiple counts of breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, and burglary. Firstly, he breaks into the local zoo to steal some giraffe milk. Then for the final heist, he breaks into the zoo once again, and this time steals the giraffe itself. Add in the charges for breaking into the chocolate vault, and young Willy is looking at some serious consequences.
Good evening, miss. Everything's fine.
Now, the sentencing for burglary can depend on a lot of factors, resulting in prison or jail time anywhere between 1 to a maximum of 20 years, depending on the nature of the crime and jurisdiction, along with some hefty fines. However, for Mr. Wonka, his biggest crime, which is breaking into the chocolate vault, would be hard to convict. Technically, he didn't steal the chocolate, but only opened it into the town fountain, where everyone could have it. And with the corruption of the chocolate cartel exposed, it would be hard to convict Wonka for crimes like grand larceny. As far as stealing the giraffe is concerned, well, technically, he didn't steal it. It was more like he let it out of the zoo. Still, the breaking and entering charges will still apply, which can be anywhere from 1 to 5 years per offense. So, that's 3 years for breaking and entering, twice into the zoo, and once into the chocolate vault. Add another 6 months for petty theft, as the only thing of value he actually stole was a couple of pints of giraffe milk. So, the final sentencing is 3 years and 6 months in prison. Now, Mr. Wonka may have escaped major punishments for now, but we aren't done with him. Let's take a look at his next crime, assault. You may be wondering, Willy Wonka is such a kind soul. When did he assault someone? Well, if you remember, he does give some chocolate to Basil, the guard at the zoo, and Gwenny, the mistress of the keys at the vault. Chocolate that mimics a night out in town and knocks both of them out cold. This can definitely constitute assault. However, luckily for Wonka, no one was actually hurt as a result of these shenanigans. So the typical punishment for assault, which does not result in great bodily harm, can be anywhere between 6 months to 3 years. Since no one was seriously hurt, let's keep the sentencing on the lower end of that limit, and add another 6 months each for every count.
You're lucky, the little orange man didn't find this.
Giraffe.
Okay, I'll learn how to read.
Oh, that's nice.
That's another 1.5 years added to Wonka's sentence. That is, if Basil and Gwenny decide to press charges. Things aren't looking too good for our chocolate-loving protagonist. He has already gotten himself into some big trouble, and there is more where that came from. The next crime Mr. Wonka has unknowingly committed is child endangerment. Willy Wonka's friends from the wash house play a major part in both his lawful and unlawful escapades. However, most of them are adults, except Noodle. Noodle is still a minor, and involving her in his plans and making her commit multiple crimes would land Wonka in a good bit of trouble under the charges of child endangerment. Since Wonka does help Noodle meet her mom after so long, we can safely say that she won't be pressing any charges against Wonka. Still, for simply involving her in his adventures, he could get up to 1 year in prison. Lastly, there is one more thing Mr. Wonka is guilty of, and that is some good old negligence. In fact, he could also be convicted of criminal negligence, which comes with some serious punishment as well. After selling his amazing chocolates on the street for a while, Wonka finally gets a shop and has a grand opening. A lot of customers show up and eat a lot of chocolate. It seems like they are having a great time, and everything is going well until they start to feel some side effects. Turns out the chocolate was poisoned. Luckily, the poison only makes everyone grow colorful hair, and it didn't actually kill anyone. This could carry some serious consequences for Willy, however, after the cartel is caught and is proved that they were the ones who actually poisoned the chocolates. I don't think Wonka will get much heat for it. So, it seems like Wonka escaped any punishment for this crime. Now, let's take a look at the final sentence for Mr. Wonka. Well, looks like he will spend a decent amount of time in prison, a total of 6 years to be exact. Well, now that we're done with Mr. Wonka, let's take a look at the more nefarious elements in the film. Starting with perhaps the most devious of them all, Mrs. Scrubbit, and her fake aristocrat partner, Mr. Bleacher. In the film, Mrs. Scrubbit and Mr. Bleacher manage a quaint hotel. However, their dubious practices involve targeting vulnerable individuals seeking affordable accommodations. Exploiting their guests, they coerce them into signing exploitative contracts, charging exorbitant fees for their stay. When unable to meet the financial demands, the victims are compelled to work in the hotel's wash house. This nefarious scheme not only preys on the unsuspecting, but also implicates the duo in a series of serious crimes, the first of which is some good old-fashioned fraud. The contracts designed by this criminal duo purposely have all the shady stuff written in a small print, which is conveniently hidden from sight. Well, in the real world, such a contract would really hold up and would constitute fraud. Typically, the punishment of fraud can vary depending on several factors. However, in this situation, you can be certain that Mrs. Scrubbit and Mr. Bleacher would get the maximum penalty, which is about 5 years in prison, along with some serious fines and civil restitutions. Now, that might seem a little too lenient for this villainous duo, but don't worry, the real trouble is yet to come, because they will probably also be charged with kidnapping and forced labor. Now, even though Mrs. Scrubbit has signed a contract with Wonka and her other victims, in the real world, those contracts would be void. So keeping them locked in the wash house and forcing them to work would definitely land her and Mr. Bleacher in a lot of trouble. They could be facing 10 to 15 years in prison per count. And for Noodle, who was a minor, the punishment could be even higher, going up to 30 years. Let's give them 10 years for each adult, and for Noodles, who have been working there for over 11 years now, they would get the maximum sentence of 30 years. So it's safe to say that this wicked duo is going away for good, and both of them are getting a total of 80 years in prison, or in other words, a life sentence. Mrs. Scrubbit and Mr. Bleacher definitely get what they deserve, and if you wanted to be even stricter, they could face some additional charges for child endangerment, assault for helping the chocolate cartel poison Wonka's chocolate, and human trafficking as well. However, since they already have 86 years each, let's move on to the next set of characters, Mr. Slugworth, Fickle Grubber, and Prodnose, or as they are better known, the Chocolate Cartel. Wonka's main rivals in the film are members of the Chocolate Cartel. They already have a well-established monopoly over the chocolate market and are involved in loads of crimes throughout the film. Let's start with the lighter stuff and look at their several white-collar crimes. In the movie, the chocolate cartel uses multiple illegal tactics to control the chocolate market and make sure that they don't have any competition. They commit loads of white-collar crimes along the way, like blackmailing, fraud, and market manipulation. This sort of white-collar crimes can carry some serious consequences, including hefty fines, reaching millions of dollars, and in some cases, imprisonment of up to 5 years as well. With a ledger full of such illegal transactions, it won't be difficult to convict every member of the chocolate cartel with the maximum penalty. So let's give them 5 years each. Next up, the cartel is also responsible for bribing police officers, including the chief of police.
700 boxes.
1,800 boxes.
Oh,
The sentence for bribing a police officer spans from 3 to 15 years, contingent upon the rank of official bribed and the nature of the favor sought. Specifically, if the chocolate cartel is found guilty of bribing a police chief to eliminate the competition, they likely wouldn't face the maximum penalty. Still, you can safely assume that they would get another 5 years each added to their sentence, along with some serious fines reaching millions of dollars. Each member of the cartel already carries a 10-year sentence on their rap sheet, and the prospect of more severe charges looms ahead as we get into more serious crimes like attempted murder. When the cartel fails to stop Wonka from selling chocolate, they make a plan to send him away for good. They make a deal with him, in which they promise to pay for the release of his friends and Noodle if he leaves and never comes back. Wonka agrees and boards a ship that they have booked for him. However, while looking for the captain, he finds that the ship is rigged to explode. He narrowly escapes death as the ship explodes and the members of the cartel watch from afar. This is a straight-up attempted murder charge on all 3 members of the cartel.
Captain?
If that wasn't enough, when they find out that Wonka has survived and attempted to break into their vault, they try to kill him again, and this time Noodle is with him as well. They try to drown them both in chocolate and bring another 2 counts of attempted murder on themselves. Typically, the sentencing for attempted murder can be anywhere between 10 to 25 years, and since the cartel tries to kill Wonka multiple times, they are definitely getting the maximum sentencing. So, that's a good 75 years in prison for 3 counts of attempted murder. The members of the chocolate cartel are going to spend the rest of their lives in prison and have a total prison sentence of 85 years in prison for every member, along with millions of dollars in fines. Near the end of the movie, we find out that Arthur Slugworth, the leader of the chocolate cartel, is actually Noodle's uncle, who stole Noodle from her mother and threw her down the laundry chute of Mrs. Scrubbett's hotel. He did all this to make sure that he inherited his brother's business instead of Noodle.
your mother turned up on my doorstep, begging me to get a doctor for her sick little newborn.
Instead, you put me down a laundry chute.
When your mother returned, I told her you had died. She was heartbroken, of course, but
That adds another charge of kidnapping on Mr. Slugworth's rap sheet, along with charges for child endangerment and fraud. So let's add another 30 years to his sentence for kidnapping a child and another 2 years for child endangerment. That's another 32 years in prison, which brings his total prison sentence up to 117 years in prison. The last character we're going to look at for this video is the chief of police. Regrettably for Mr. Wonka and his companions, the town's police chief possesses an insatiable sweet tooth. So profound, one might even describe him as an unabashed chocoholic. To get his fix of chocolate, he does a lot of illegal stuff, the most prominent of which is accepting bribes. The chief of police acts as a personal henchman for the chocolate cartel, for a price, of course. Accepting bribes can put a police officer in some serious trouble. Not only would they lose their job, but they could even be looking at some serious jail time and substantial fines.
I brought my invoice. Here's the good stuff.
How would you like to earn a few more of those?
Oh, I am listening.
The punishment for accepting a bribe can stretch up to 15 years, with fines up to 3 times the amount of the bribe. Since the chief of police has been on the payroll of the cartel for a very long time, he'll probably get the maximum sentence. However, bribery is not the only thing he has to worry about. It's the things he does in exchange that really seal the deal for him. First of all, he will definitely get a charge for abuse of authority. Throughout the film, he uses his authority to prevent Wonka from selling his chocolate in the town. And by the looks of it, he has done the same to several other chocolatiers before.
Where did he go?
If he gets caught, he could be looking at anywhere between 1 to 5 years of prison time for abuse of authority. Considering how long he has been at it, he'll get the maximum sentence of 5 years. The next crime on the police chief's rap sheet is some good old-fashioned torture. After he is unable to persuade Wonka to stop by pressuring him, he finds him one night and tortures him. He pushes Wonka's head into a fountain of freezing water and hits him in the head with a club.
You're gonna get more than a bonk on the head.
I don't have a bonk on the head.
Can you give me just a second? Sure.
Yeah, this is enough to get him convicted of assault and torture, which can carry a punishment of up to 15 years. As if assault and torture weren't enough, he goes a step further and makes a plan to murder Wonka by making him board a ship that is rigged to explode. So the next crime he has to worry about is conspiracy to commit murder. If the police chief doesn't get charged with attempted murder, he is definitely looking at some serious jail time for
Captain?
conspiracy to commit murder, which can carry a sentence of 5 to 20 years in prison. Once again, we believe that he'll get the maximum punishment here, which adds another 20 years to his sentence. So in total, the chief of police will be going to jail for 55 years, which means that he probably isn't going to be there for the rest of his life. So overall, Wonka was a fun film, with a lot of lighthearted humor and some catchy songs. Though the tone of the film is quite whimsical, there are several serious societal themes highlighted in the film. It shows the value of imagination and chasing your dreams, despite having the odds stacked against you. We hope you enjoyed this playful legal analysis of the crimes committed by the characters. That's all from Cinema Crimes, and we'll see you in the next video.